Hey everyone, Captain V here from All Pro. We're talking jigging 101. Every time I go to the shows, we sell a lot of jigs, and I always have people coming up to me and asking me, what's the best jig for this? What's the best jig for that? Do they have the right rod? Do they have the right reel? So I decided to create this video, Jigging 101, to give you just the basics. Now, this is the biggest trick here, or the biggest part, is that everything I have to say, there is an exception to the rule. Okay. So nothing is in stone. We're dealing with fish. We're dealing with fishing. We're doing a lot of variables. We're dealing with currents and tides and moons, and you're dealing from uh, boats that drift differently than other boats. The wind might grab them. So there's all these different variables. Plus, the fish may be biting. They may not be biting. So I know someone may out there, they know better than me, and they'll say, oh no, this is the way we do it. Well, listen, if it works for you, you do it. I'm giving you Jigging 101 to just get you going. So let's talk about rods first. Do you need a special rod? Okay. For Jigging 101, you technically don't need a special rod. Okay. Now, are there rods out there that enhance the jigging application? Absolutely. And you could spend anywhere from maybe $150 to $1,000 on some equipment and jigging rods and so forth. Um, we make a rod. This is a 6'6" all pro rod. It is excellent, awesome for jigging. It's a kind of an all purpose rod, but it's built like a slow pitch rod. Now, if you want to get into jigging and you want to have a good experience, I'm going to make some recommendations. Okay. You don't need to spend $1,000,000. This rod here is in the range of $250. We run sales in the 225 range. Okay, you might get me at a show and get a show special, maybe a tad better than that. Um, Depends on how many we have in stock and where we are in the season. Now, what are you looking for in a jigging rod? Again, depends on the species that you're targeting. We're going to talk mostly about like your inshore stuff here in the Northeast, like striped bass, sea bass, pollock, cod. Some people love jigging for fluke. Yes, fluke. I'm going to go over that with you quickly about fluke as well. Most fish out there you could jig. You could jig cobia, my. Obviously tuna. Everyone knows about the tuna stuff. We're not going to be talking too much about tuna here today because that's a whole nother application. Those are some serious fish. So what we're going to talk about is the basics. So this here, as you may be able to see, has guides that spiral. Now, the industry term for that is an acid wrap guide. We call them spiral guide. It's more like a layman term. People can understand spiral instead of acid. And what that does, the guides basically turn around and it makes the rod, it's almost a spinning rod. And why is that? There's three reasons, but the main purpose for you and me for Jigging 101 is that when you are jigging going up and down, when you're line your braid, because the braid is very light, you're going to be using braid. You're not using mono, okay? As you're jigging, your line gets on top. You want your line to be able to slip off the tip and not get tangled up on your guide. So that's why I favor either a spinning rod or if you're going to use a casting rod, with like a bait caster or conventional, you're going to want a spiral or an acid wrap rod. You want something with a fast tip that gives you a lot of action so you could get a lot of action on your jig, and you want something with a good backbone, especially if you're going to be targeting larger fish in the 20 to 50-pound range. You want a good backbone. You don't want something that you could turn into a pretzel. Doesn't work for you. So now let's talk a little about jigs. The jigs come in all different weights. And you'll notice most of these jigs come from Asia, Japan, China, Malaysia, Vietnam, and they use grams. That's their weight system. That's what they use. They've always used that. So you'll get used to it real quick, grams to ounces, because here we use ounces. And you're like, hey, what's 150 grams? What's 200 grams? Um, on our packaging, we package it with the grams on the lure itself, but on the packaging, we use ounces to help you. Just in case you're in the store, you don't have your phone readily available, and you want to do a calculation, know how much this actually weighs. You could say, oh, 3 ounces, 4 ounces. And then you say, oh, look at that, it's 180 grams. This is one a little bit more. So those are the different things about the weight. So you can use different weights. What's going to determine the weight? Well, really, depth and current will determine weight for the most part. Okay. If you're fishing real deep and you got a really moving current, well, guess what? You're going to go with something really, significant, like, 16 ounces. This one here is 10 and a half, 12 ounces. 12 ounces. So you're going to use something like this. We caught pollock on this exact one here in about 250, 275 feet of water. This exact jig right here, we jigged them up with that. However, most of us and most of my clients and most people that I run into are fishing inshore for sea bass, for striped bass. They'll be fishing for some fluke. They like to do it with fluke. And weak fish will also an inshore species that we'll use. So let's talk about basic jigs right now, real quick. If you notice, and I'll try to zoom in here, this particular jig has a line in it. Okay, we call that here at All Pro the keel, a jig keel. Some jigs have no keels, like this one. This one has a vertical keel. Some jigs that you'll see, I don't have it with me. I thought it was here. I don't see it. Will have multiple keels on it. This one here has a horizontal keel, goes this way. Now, what does a keel generally do? Keel will give you movement. And depending on the placement of the keel, the size of the keel, the look, and how many there are, give you different movements of that lure, of that jig. Is more keels better than less keels? No, absolutely not. It just gives you a different setup, okay? A different movement that may be good for one application, but not good for another application. So that's why you're not looking for keels you're not looking to get as many keels as you can, thinking that you're going to get a better jig. That's not how it works. So for instance, this here, the shape of it has a single keel and it's wide and comes narrow. This is a small one of this, same exact one, more weight than this here. This is more of a flutter or a slow pitch jig. You might hear that term, slow pitch. And that's more of a technique you're doing with the rod, not quite with the jig. It's a fishing technique, the slow pitch. So this here is going to flutter down, and that single keel is going to make it wobble, that flutter. And because it has a wider surface, it's going to flutter. This here has no keel, but has a curvature. This jig is going to go down like this. It won't flutter. So one might think, hey, this is a better jig than this. It gives me more action. No, not technically. Because if you're fishing in, let's say, 60 feet of water, and you want to get something down to the bottom, this is going to take its time getting down. And by the time it gets down, you're gone. If you don't have spot lock or you're not anchored, you're gone. You're off the fish already. While this one here, this drops down more like a torpedo, and the action occurs as you're pulling up, as you're jigging on it. You'll see there'll be more action here with this. Same thing with this jig. This jig here is 180 grams, and you could fish this jig over some other jigs that might be 200 and let's say 20 grams. It's a heavier jig, but this will get to the bottom faster. Why? It's the way it's made. And this will drop down faster, and the action is when you're jigging it. The water will get pressed against here, and it will flutter and move in that way. Before I go even further about some other shapes here that I have on the table, no, I actually do have it. I found it. If you look at this one here, this is the one I was looking for before. We call this a star. I'll try to get this zoomed in here. A star keel. You see all the keels on there going different, looks like a star, a burst, right? This has incredible action all over the place. You're moving it, it dodges, it dives, it does this, it goes even upside down. Crazy action. However, it's not always great for all species and the conditions that you're fishing in. So you need to kind of get an idea of when to use these. So let's talk about the biggest debate before I go a little further about techniques. Hooks up or hooks down. Okay. Now, if you're fishing hooks up, there's a solid ring on the hook itself. You have a split ring that's attached to the lure, and the split ring is attached to the ring on the hooks. Okay. You always want to attach your line, if you're fishing with hooks up, to that ring. Okay. So this way, if you do get a fish, you're fighting the fish and not fighting the lure at all. You're only fighting the fish. Now, I often will fish hooks down. Why? I fish in an area where it's a very sandy bottom and the structure is mostly buried. And I don't have a very big concern about getting stuck on the bottom. And when I'm squidding a particular jig, depending on the technique, we're going to go over that as well, the fish are normally coming from the bottom and up. And I want them to hit here. Gives me a better chance of getting a setup. I also have a better chance of getting two hooks in the fish. Now, when will I use hooks up? Just reverse. If I'm fishing over a wreck that is exposed, that I have a good chance of getting stuck on the bottom, I will fish hooks up, because as I fish hooks up, as you'll see, it will hit the bottom, and the first thing that hits is this here, not the hooks. So I have a less of a chance of snagging, okay, and dealing with the snag. The other reason why I would want to fish hooks up is like for a lure like this. I mentioned earlier how this goes crazy all over the place, right? I mean, it goes all over. Well, if I fish his hooks down and this jig is going all over, guess what? It's going to grab my line and foul hook my line, okay? And now it's unfishable. So you might be in 60 feet of water, 100 feet of water, and you're like, oh man, you know it. You'll know it's foul hooked. It feels like you got a hit, and it's not a hit because there's no fight. And you got to reel it all the way up, unfoul the hook from the line, because the hook will grab the line, drop it back down. If you fish it this way, doesn't matter if this hits the line or not. You're not going to foul hook the line. It bounces off the line, goes around the line, no big deal. So a lot of people, depending where you're fishing, will always fish hooks up. Down in the south, they fish a lot of the reefs and around reefs and wrecks. I bet 80% or more fish hooks up in that area there for those two reasons right there. Some people will also say, I'll give you the third, although I don't know how relevant it is, but just to give you the information, some people believe that if you fish hooks down, the movement of the hooks might take away from some of the action from the jig. I'm sure some jigs that's probably true, but I don't find that the way I'm fishing. being that relevant where it's costing me action on a particular jig. Now, here's a little trick of the trade when it comes to jigs. Depending on the species of fish, and I'm going to name two real quick, striped bass and sea bass. Those two species of fish, when I'm jigging, I will improve the bite by putting a teaser about 18, 20 inches, even 24 inches above the teaser, okay? Above the jig, I'm sorry, above the jig. This will definitely create a bite, activate a bite, and you'll probably catch more fish on the teaser than you do on the jig. This here we usually use for striped bass. It's a bigger teaser, bigger profile. If I'm going for sea bass, I would use, like we make something called a pro teaser. It's on a 4-0 hook. It's a little smaller. It's much smaller actually. And it's up here, and I'll use something like this. This is a 6-0 hook. It's a larger profile. We would use this with something like this. Definitely something like this here, like that. We would do that. So let's talk about what jigs work best for a particular species. Because I'm in the Northeast, the most common is your sea bass and your striped bass. So those fish we're mostly fishing in 60, 80 feet or shallower water. So with those species there, I absolutely love the flutterbait jig. Beautiful jig, great action. It's all about action and presentation. And the striped bass, as well as the sea bass, will strike this. The technique that we're going to use for this is we're going to free spool it down. And then every 10 feet, 20 feet, depending on how deep we are, we're going to jig it. Okay, and pop it like this, and then free spool it back down, all until we get down to the bottom, right? And we're gonna stop every 10, 15 feet, 20 feet, and jig, jig, jig. Now, if you're marking fish and you're on a boat where you could see your fish machine, and you're marking fish in a particular water column, well, you don't want to be jigging, before you get to the fish. You jig as you get into that water column where the fish are, and then you can even drop it below. And then on the way up, there's a couple of different techniques where you could use. One of the techniques is called squidding. And squidding is, instead of like just jerking it like this up and down, you're actually reeling it fast through the water column, through the fish. And when they see that action coming up through, you'll see the striped bass, mostly striped bass here, will hit that and strike that. Sea bass are mostly on the bottom. They're going to hit the jig as you're bouncing it off the bottom. This here is called the Fishtastic jig. Real pretty jig, very durable jig. I like using this jig mostly for sea bass. The reason why I like this one for sea bass, it gets down quick. It gives me good action when I am down there. And they absolutely crush it. So this is the Fishtastic. Reason why I like it is, one, it gets down fast. Two, the action it provides going up is great. There's a curvature in here, and it gives me a little bit of a wiggle when I'm jerking it, right, and jigging it. Perfect. I love it. The flutter bait, I showed it to you before. You will be surprised. Get one of these and try this out next fall and summer. Next spring, fall, and summer. For fluke. There are more jumbos that are caught every year by people experimenting and working jigs. Fluke are predators. They are ferocious. The way the technique is with these is that first, you got to work these on a sandy bottom. So if you're on a sticky bottom, skip this part. Not working for you. You got to be on a sandy bottom. And what you do is you drop this down and you free spool it down to the bottom. And there's no jigging here. What you're doing is you're dragging and popping it. You're dragging and popping it. And you can do a couple like little quick snaps. And that's why we mentioned about that rod. It's a fast rod, and you can do a couple of quick snaps, and that rod will work. Very sensitive tip, and it will pull and give you that action that you're looking for. And you'll be surprised on how many fluke you'll catch with that. Same thing with this one here, much smaller if you're in skinnier water. If you're looking for weak fish or fluke, you're going to drop it down. You're going to pop it, pop it, pop it, pop it off the bottom like this. And you'll be surprised on how they will just smash a jig. There may be some better applications for those species at the time when you're fishing for them. But if you want to try jigging, or if the other applications aren't working, throw a jig on and give it a try. Something else I like to show you is new for us for this year, and that's these speed jigs. Okay. Now the speed jigs don't technically have a keel on them, but they're presented almost in like a diamond shape. You'll see it's very narrow here and come out thicker here. They have some really great coloring on them, really nice jigs. We make ours with the hooks down basically 50, 60% on the way down. You'll see a lot of jigs, they'll have them up higher. I don't like that. This jig I fish mostly hooks up. Okay, I'm fishing in deeper water. I'm fishing hooks up. This is a great jig for tuna, for your pelagics. We get in the summertime out here, you get onto some wahoo, mahi, the stripers. When in the fall, use these for stripers. We got smaller ones. Here's a smaller one. It's almost like your diamond jig, except it has a wavering or a wobbling is a better term, wobbling movement on it. Real effective jigs, but we don't jerk them like we would do like with a flutterbait jig. This is considered more of a speed jig, or we call it a squidding jig. That's why we actually call it a squid jig. Even though it doesn't look like a squid, it looks more like, I guess, like a sand eel or a fish. But we call it a squid jig because we're squidding it. That's the technique. And what that technique is the following: you're gonna look for the fish where the fish are in the water column. You're gonna drop it down below the fish. Sometimes, to be honest with you, you don't have access to that. You just drop it to the bottom. Okay, as long as the fish aren't way up high and you're dropping it only 80 feet below them. You don't need to do that. But you're gonna drop it down behind them, and then you're gonna reel it in quick. You're gonna reel it in quick, and when this comes up, it's gonna wobble and it's gonna come up quick. And that action coming up quick through the fish, perfect jig to use for that. And they crush them. So this is a squid jig. It's a speed jig. So instead of it free spooling stop jig, free spool stop jig, like you may do with some of these other ones that I mentioned, like the flutterbait jig you're going to do that with. You can even kind of do that with a fish-tastic. This is called a rattler. It actually has rattles in it. This is a bottom jig. For the most part, you're gonna drop this one down to the bottom. We'll go over that side keel in a moment. This one here is a speed jig. You're looking for the action on the way up. You're looking to reel in fast. So reel in fast. Let's talk about reels. Now, if you're fishing a bait caster or like a conventional reel, you want to make sure you have a high speed reel. So we make the Pro 300. It goes with our rod, the perfect fit. It has 25 pounds of drag. It's 8-to-1 gear ratio. That means this reel brings in a little over 3 feet of line with one rotation. So with one rotation, that spool spins 8 times and brings in a little over 3 feet of line. What's good about that? If you're going to be speed jigging, it's great. You get that jig up there real quick. If you're fishing real deep and you don't have a hit and you got to reset, or you get a tangle or something, you got to get it back up quick. Boom, you can get it up quick. Though that's the bonus. The bonus is about using a bait caster or a conventional reel, the advantages is that you control the drop. For the most part, it's relatively easy. You just put your finger on the spool. So if you're dropping it down, 20 feet, give it a pull, and then you're going to drop it another free spool, another 20, 30 feet, give it a pull or two, and then free spool it again. You can't really do that with a spinning reel, okay? You open up the bail, it goes, and then you're going to be grabbing that line per se, and it slips and stuff. It's just not the best method. So this works really well regarding that. However, the advantage of using a spinning reel is that the line comes off the spool easier and faster. So you can get a lighter jig down faster than using a bait caster or a conventional reel, because this has to spin, has to go through here. With a spinning reel, once you open up the bail, that line just comes right off the spool. There's just no spinning of the spool. It just comes off the spool. Gets down faster, especially if you're going to be using lighter braid line. And as you get more experience in jigging, you'll learn things like, yes, go with lighter braid. You'll get things down faster. You also will learn lighter the jig, more fish you will catch. Okay. Unfortunately, though, sometimes you have to use 12 ounces, to get down. You're not going to get fish if you don't get down. So you have to get down to the zone. So with a lighter jig, with a spinning setup, with very light braid, you can get a very small jig down in deeper water faster. So that is basically your one-on-one review of the reels themselves. I have another cool jig here. Love this jig. We call this the Squidly. It's kind of interesting because instead of having a sharp spine or keel, it's rounded here. And it's tapered to the thin on both sides. And it's relatively not flat, but wider here. So when this is dropped, it actually swims. It's pretty cool. You have to actually see it for me to explain it. So we fish this mostly hooks up. And when we drop this down, it doesn't go down. It actually swims out. It goes out, obviously, as it's sinking. It goes out, and then it might just take a left or a right, and it goes down. And it actually swimming through the water column as you're dropping it. And then I like to speed this up through, or use the word squidding it up through the water column. Now, with me saying that, like I mentioned before, there's always, variables. We were crushing the pollock on this jig. And we dropped it down to the bottom and bounced them off the bottom. And they crushed it. So if the pelagic or my species I was targeting was up through the water column, like a tuna or something like that, yeah, I would go and I would speed jig this through. I might even, because you could work it like in a slow pitch motion, which is you jerk, you kind of reel, you jerk, you may be reeling, you jerk, you're reeling, you jerk, you're reeling. That's kind of your slow pitch. And if you have the proper rod with that sensitive tip, you'll get that reaction and you'll get into a rhythm of that. So this is Captain V from All Pro. This is Jigging 101. Very basic. If you'd like to get some more information about any of these jigs, you could go to our website, allprotacklebox.com. Reach out to us, reach out to me. You could view these jigs. We have most of them up for sale on the website. Check it out. I hope this helps someone. Captain V, let's get fishing.